Hi guys and welcome back. Now, we know that the basic assumption about consumer motivation does not differ between what the indifference analysis is and the cardinal utility theory, right? So we know that the consumers try to maximize their satisfaction by allocating a given budget between various goods and services that they wish to buy. And by what is different in indifference analysis that social scientists were trying to explain is that consumers' behavior does not need to know how much, right? How much satisfaction is derived from the consumption of each product, nor indeed the consumers need to know this, right? So all that is needed is that the consumer could make rational choices between different bundles of goods and services, and they can decide which bundle gives him or her more or less satisfaction. And for that reason, guys, we'll study about the indifference curve. Now guys, the indifference curve is basically a diagram that shows consumers taste or preferences. Now if you look at if you look at the definition of what the indifference curve is, so indifference curve is basically showing combinations of products that sort of yield the same satisfaction or equal satisfaction to the consumer, and the consumer is indifferent between those combinations that are indicated on the points on one indifference curve. Now, there's a reason why I've written one indifference curve. So, any point on the indifference curve would give the consumer equal or the same satisfaction or the same utility. Now, what this means is we'll just see. But before that, we are going to be making two assumptions. The first assumption we'll see in this video, the second is we're going to be seeing it in the next video. So, guys, the first assumption is that the consumer is always, remember, when we're drawing the indifference curve, we're assuming that the consumer will always prefer more of any one product, right? More obviously, the consumer will prefer more of any one product to the less of that same product, because more is preferred, more is better for the consumer. So the consumer would definitely prefer more of any one product to the less of that same product, and obviously he would definitely end up preferring more of both the products because they are more desirable, right? It gives them higher satisfaction or higher levels of utility, right? So guys, I've drawn a table which shows that there are different bundles, bundle A to F, and they are telling us the different combinations of foods and clothing in a particular bundle, and each bundle is giving Adil the same satisfaction. So bundle A is giving him a certain satisfaction. To what now? What is that level of satisfaction? As in the extent of that satisfaction, we're not measuring it, and that's what the indifference theory explains, that we do not even need to measure it. However, Adil is rational enough to know that bundle B is giving him the same satisfaction as bundle A, and bundle D is giving him the same satisfaction as bundle C or bundle B or bundle A. So A to F, all bundles are giving him equal satisfaction or equal utility, right? So I've drawn them, I've plotted them on this graph. So basically 30 and 5 units at point A, and then 18 units and 18 units of clothing, and 10 units of food, and then 15 units of food, and basically 13 units of clothing. So basically if I join all these points together, right, if I join them together, let's say, so I don't have a scale, right? I mean, I'm not going to be joining. I just haven't drawn the graph to scale. I don't have a graph paper right now. But then again, if I join these points together, what am I getting is that I'm getting an indifference curve, right? So this guys is basically an indifference curve. So this guy is an indifference curve, basically an indifference line. It's telling that the consumer is indifferent between all these bundles. So it shows that the bundles that give Adil equal satisfaction, right? He's indifferent between them, and these bundles are plotted on the red line. And for this reason, this red line that I've drawn connecting these bundles together is called the indifference curve, right? Because from A to F, all of these bundles give Adil equal satisfaction, and for him, they are equally desirable. Adil is rational enough to know that, right? So basically, guys, it's so what we need to understand from the indifference curve is that each bundle on the indifference curve is giving Adil equal satisfaction first and foremost, right? Also remember that let's say I'm going to be labeling this was basically bundle B, right? And this is bundle A, and this was bundle C, D, E, and F, right? Now, if you can see that, let's say at B, we know at B, right, Adil is basically consuming a bundle of 18 units of clothing and 10 units of food, right? Whereas at bundle A, he's consuming 30 units of clothing and he's consuming 5 units of food, right? He's consuming less food and more clothing. So basically, we need to know that and if you're saying that bundle B and bundle A both are giving him equal satisfaction, so it means that if we move from B to A, right, if we move from B to A, and we sort of take away those 5 units of clothing from Adil, then Adil would require at least 30, I mean, he would require 30 units of clothing to leave him feeling just as satisfied as he was at point B, right? Understood, guys? So, and like if you move from point B to point C and then D and E and F, as you move down the indifference curve, so if you move in the opposite direction, if you move in the opposite direction from B to F, so basically we are consuming more food and less clothing. So we could say that, how much extra food Adil would need, right? How much extra food Adil would need to leave him equally satisfied, as we take away those successive units of clothing away from him, right? So the answer to this question, as in how much extra sort of food he would need to, if we take away those successive units of clothing from him, that leaves him equally satisfied, and that leaves him, equally satisfied in terms of the amount of utility he gets. So, as in the amount of satisfaction he gets, right? So for that reason, for that answer, I mean, that answer is basically traced out through the line that passes through the points that passes through the points, these points C, B, C, D, E, F, right? So A, B, C, D, E, F is the indifference curve, and that's sort of the answer to this question. So Adil is sort of indifferent between all these points on the curve, and these combinations give him the equal amount of satisfaction, right? So for this, you need to know that. And guys, important thing is that remember the assumption that the consumer always prefers more of any one product to the less of that same product. Now, guys, also remember that since any combination that is on the indifference curve, right? So any combination that is on our indifference curve is basically giving us exactly the same utility, and we don't really know how much, because that's sort of irrelevant to us in the indifference analysis. So it's not like Adil would prefer B over A on the indifference curve, or it's like Adil would prefer D over C or C over B, on the curve. Since all these combinations give exactly the same utility, right? Hence, the consumer or Adil cannot choose that which one is preferred on the indifference curve. So if we cannot choose that whether B is preferred over A or A is preferred over B, because all are sort of giving the same utility or the same satisfaction, no combination on the indifference curve is preferred over another. So Adil is sort of indifferent, and because he's indifferent, that is why the curve is called the indifference curve. Great. Now, guys, one more thing I need to tell you is that I'll just let you know that why have I shaded the areas, but just hang on for a second. So basically, remember that all the bundles that are above the indifference curve, remember that in the blue region that I have shaded, are known as superior, and they are preferred because they will give Adil definitely more utility than any bundle on the indifference curve, making him better off. Now remember this, that any combination of bundle that is above his indifference curve, Adil's indifference curve, would definitely give him more utility than any bundle that is on the indifference curve. So all bundles in the blue region would definitely be more superior and more preferred to Adil as compared to any bundle that is on the indifference curve, and I'll explain the logic for that as well. And the bundles in the red area, right? The red area, I've drawn it over here. So the bundles in the red area basically would give Adil less utility than any bundle on the indifference curve, and definitely would be regarded as inferior. And Adil would not prefer it, and it would not be preferred by Adil, and it would make Adil worse off, any consumer worse off. So bundles in the red area are inferior to B or any combination on the indifference curve. It's not only about B, it's about any combination on the indifference curve. It would be inferior, as well as all the bundles that are on the indifference curve. All the bundles that are in the blue region would be superior. I've written superior to B, but it's not that it would only be superior to B. Why have I written B? I've written B because B was my initial starting bundle combination, but all these bundles in the blue and the red region, in the blue region, would be superior to all the bundles on the indifference curve, while in the red region, any bundle in the red region would make Adil worse off than as compared to any bundle on the indifference curve, right? Now the reason for that is, so why does that happens? Because we need to see that, you need to know that in your analysis. So for example, if I say that, let's take an example where I consider a combination, that is combination G with 20 food and 20 clothing. So this is combination G over here in the blue region with 20 food and 20 clothing, right? Now it's outside the indifference curve in the blue or the preferred region, so it's in the superior region, which is obviously preferred, right? So basically, you know now, from the face of it, if we just look at the face of it, from the face of it, it might not be sort of obvious, right? It might not. Now, what I'm saying is that from the face of it, it might not appear obvious whether G is preferred to A, because at A we have although we have less food, but then we have more clothing, because at A we have less food, but then we have more clothing, right, as compared to G. So from the face of it, it might not appear obvious that whether G is preferred to A or not, which has, because A has more clothing but less food. Okay, fine. But if you look at if we go back to our assumption, and the assumption said that more is preferred, right? Remember assumption one, it said that more of any product is preferred, right? More is better, more is preferred. So if you go back to assumption which said that more is preferred, so for sure we could say, even from the face of it, we could say that G is definitely preferred than C, because C has 15 units of food and 13 clothing, right? C has 15 food and 13 clothing, which, so obviously G is definitely preferred than C. And even appears to be that way, that G is preferred than C, because at G you have more food and more clothing as compared to bundle C on the indifference curve, while G sort of does not appears to be preferred than A, because from the face of it, it has less food, although it has more clothing, but it has less food, so it doesn't really appears to be preferred. But although it is preferred, it is in the blue region, hence it is preferred by definition, by technical terms. I mean, by technicality, it is preferred because it is in the superior region. But then from the face of it, it might not appear that way. So how are we going to sort of prove that, right? So now let's prove that. Okay. So what we're going to say is that for sure, yeah, G is preferred to bundle C because G has more clothing and more food than C. But the thing is, guys, now listen to this very carefully. The thing is that indifference curve shows, remember, that indifference curve shows that any point that is above the curve, right? I mean, in the superior region, will be obviously superior. I mean, that's what it's going to appear that way. Any point that is above the curve in the superior region would obviously be superior to some points on the curve, right? So, for example, G seems sort of superior to C, but G does not seem superior to A. That's what it does not seems, right? So that's what exact. Now, I'm not saying whether it is or not. I'm saying it doesn't seems or it doesn't appears that way. Because so what I'm saying is that any point above the curve will obviously be superior to some points on the curve, right? It will be superior to some points on the curve in the sense that it will obviously have more of both food and clothing than those points on the curve. So G appears more superior to C because it has not only it has more food, but it has more clothing as well. But guys, now listen to this very carefully, that since all the points on the curve are equally valuable in Adil's eyes, all the points on the curve are equally valuable in Adil's eyes. So at any point which will be above the curve, right? Any point which will be above the curve and which, although does not appears to be superior, will still be superior, because the thing is that since all the points on the curve are equally valuable in Adil's eyes, so at any point which will be above the curve must therefore be superior to all the points on the curve, because the reason is that although G appears superior to A, but G does not G appears superior to C, but G does not appear superior to A. But then the thing is that the level of utility that Adil gets by consuming C is exactly the same as that of A. So if G is superior to C, then G must also be superior to A, right? So although G does not seems superior to A, because you have more food but then less clothing at G, so it doesn't really look superior, obviously, from the face of it. Although it does look superior than C, but it doesn't look superior than A. But then it is, because the utility of the satisfaction that Adil gets at C is exactly the same at A, because that those points are lying on the indifference curve. So Adil is indifferent between A and C, right? So in that sense, we can claim, we can say, we can clearly, technically say that any point, all the points that were above the indifference curve are equally valuable in Adil's eyes. Hence, we can say that any point which is above the indifference curve must be superior and preferred and more beneficial, and will make Adil more better off to all the points on the curve, right? And guys, we can also place the same argument that any point that is below and to the left of the indifference curve, that is in the red region, such as, let's say, point H, right? Point H, which has 15 food and some bottle, let's say seven clothing, right? So any point to the left and in the red region, that is below the indifference curve, which it would make Adil better off. I'm sorry, it would make Adil worse off, and that would sort of represent bundles that Adil regards as inferior to all the bundles on the indifference curve. So any bundle that is to the left of the and below the indifference curve in the red region is sort of inferior to all the bundles on the indifference curve. So that's it, guys, for this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all around in the next video. Until then, take care.